We've been watching this convoy that's got the world's attention. It was reported it was stalled. Should we read too much into that? Is it still a potent fighting machine?
There's a lot of combat power that the Russians still have available to them. So they have a number of options going forward. You know, one of those options, by the way, Lester, is that Putin can choose is that he can choose to de-escalate, and he can choose to pursue a diplomatic solution, and we hope that he does that.
I think that the world has been stunned. Some part of the world has been inspired by what we've seen by Ukrainian troops and civilians who have answered the call. But is it time, is it necessary to do a reality check on what they're facing, the size of the Russian force?
We are all inspired by what we see from the Ukraine, not just the Ukrainian forces, but Ukrainian people. It's hard to predict which way things are going to go. I'm sure that the Russians would have never predicted that they would be in a place that they are in at this point. Our focus is to make sure that we do everything possible to provide as much support to the Ukrainians so that they can defend themselves.
What do you make of these reports of Russian troops simply walking away, surrendering? Can you confirm them? Are you aware of them?
We don't have aircraft in the air over Ukraine. We also don't have any boots on the ground, so it's very difficult to confirm things. But what I will tell you is that a professional military always takes seriously the issue of recovering its fallen. This is a very important thing, not only for morale, but it's just the way that business is conducted.
And we've seen pictures and video of Russian soldiers, the bodies of Russian soldiers that apparently have been left. Is that, as a general, as a soldier, did that shock you?
I think that's beyond disappointing. If that is the case, it's disgusting from my standpoint. You know, I think leaders owe it to their troops to take care of them, and if something happens to them, to recover their remains.
Ukrainians and others have called for this idea of a no-fly zone to be patrolled by the U.S. to keep the Russian airplanes out of the sky. Is that a non-starter for you?
President Biden's been clear, Lester, that you know, U.S. troops won't fight Russia in Ukraine. And if you establish a no-fly zone, certainly in order to enforce that no-fly zone, you'll have to engage Russian aircraft. And again, that would put us at war with Russia.
We heard Vladimir Putin's words about nuclear weapons. Have you seen any actions to back up those words? Anything that suggests a new posture toward the West? Any
rhetoric about the employment of nuclear weapons is dangerous. And I think we should avoid that if at all possible. I think it creates a climate or it creates the conditions for gross miscalculations, and we certainly don't want to see that happen. I am very comfortable with our posture, and I am confident that we can defend not only ourselves, but our allies and our partners. Mr. Secretary, you and I are both children of the Cold War. Does it feel back to the future for you now to see this conflict? We certainly didn't envision being here in 2022 in Europe, and we don't have to be here. We didn't have to be here. This is a choice by one man. But again, I think it speaks to the relevance of the NATO alliance. I got to tell you, it's impressive to see the way that that countries have come together for a common cause. Defense Secretary Austin, part of our conversation at the Pentagon earlier today.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.